Hi, loves. Welcome back to the Aligned and Magnetic podcast. Today, we have such an exciting episode. This is part of our 4 or 5-part series. We're not sure yet. All about coaching and the professional coaching industry. And today, we have some alumni from the Coach Approach Academy, Kassandra and Bree. They work in very different, I would say, sections or industries and use coaching very differently. And so we really want to get into their journeys and their experience with coaching, how they use coaching, so that we can kind of give you a different lens and a different perspective. Welcome, Kassandra and Bree. Before we get started, I would love it if you could just quickly introduce yourselves. So should we start with Kassandra?
Good morning, Lauren. Thank you for having me. So Kassandra Bartow, I am the Senior Director of the Transformation Office at the Canadian Red Cross. Wife and mother of 2 littles under 5. I took the coach approach and started my coaching journey back in 2021. And really it was to elevate my leadership skills within the organization and those to which we serve. So really have been on that journey and continuing right now with we did level 1 with the coach approach, level 2. And now I am doing my mentor coaching and on my journey to be certified with the International Coaching Federation. So going for the ACC. Other than that, I love running and biking and cottaging and gardening. And so I live out in the country and work full-time virtual for the last 6 years. Wouldn't have it any other way.
That's amazing. And I didn't know you were working toward your ACC. That's so exciting. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into that with you. All right, Bree, can you give us a little intro of yourself?
Sure. First, thanks so much for having me here. My name is Bree Hamilton, and I'm a religious trauma coach. I first got introduced to what I have come to know as peer coaching. I think late 2020, early 2021, I got referred to you, Lauren, and we hopped on a call and had a conversation about the academy. And I just knew it was for me. I knew that I wanted to go down the path of getting training and certification. So I'm also working towards my ACC. My next step will be mentor coaching, and I'm working on my hours. I love the curiosity that coaching has brought to so many conversations. I don't just use it with clients. It comes into play like every single day. I'm a mom of 4. I have a 7-month-old baby, and then I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So it's a very busy house. We live on just over an acre of land in Nova Scotia and are raising chickens and other animals soon to come. So I also just love being outdoors this time of year. It's like what fuels me for the rest of the year, I'm pretty sure. So I think that's pretty much all about me.
And Bree, I love your journey. I mean, you guys have such unique journeys because you took the Coach Approach Academy, you went through the Coach Approach Academy, and then you went ahead to branch off into religious trauma. And that's it's just so incredible, the different ways that you can use coaching and the different pathways that you can take to use coaching in your career. So welcome. Okay, so the first question that I have for us to kind of unravel is, I know we touched on it a little bit, but what really pulled you or brought you to the Coach Approach Academy? Like what was it that really was calling you to learn coaching skills?
So for me, I had been in the online business world for a little while, and I had experienced coaching, but I didn't really know what coaching was, right? So I had experienced a lot of telling me what to do, hopping on calls with my coach and sitting there taking notes while she talked at me. And then I got into somebody else's circle who had gone through a cohort, and she started talking about what is peer coaching and what's the difference between coaching and consulting and all of that. And she pointed me in your direction, Lauren, and it just pulled me in. I was like, yes, this feels like so right. And of course, like shortly after, joining a cohort and actually learning what coaching truly was and how it helps us to access different parts of ourselves that, we can't really get to on our own and things like that. Then, of course, like I was on the bandwagon of like coaching versus consulting and what's the difference, and how to know if you're like truly being coached or if you're just being told what to do. And, there's purposes for all the different kinds of mentors out there, but a lot of people were, branding coaching in a very generic way, and it really wasn't coaching. And so that's really what pulled me in. And also just being in the cohort, I saw the impact it had just on my own life. Utilizing a coach approach, having people coaching me inside the cohort was like hugely impactful, and I feel like it changed my life. So that's what brought me in and attracted me and kept me here.
I love that. I love how transformational it's been for you, because truly, like, I also feel like coaching has changed my life, and it just like changes the way that you kind of exist in the world and how you relate to other people and how you show up for others. And I was just curious, Bree, if you could give like, because I know you said you were exposed to like not true coaching before and then true coaching. And I'm wondering what it felt like, if you could kind of put some words around like, what was it like to experience not true coaching and then experience the true coaching?
Well, it's kind of like night and day, because they're not even the same thing. I feel like when you are being coached by somebody who's like a business coach, let's say, they're actually really more mentoring you, because typically, at least from what I've seen, it's somebody who's like already taken the specific journey, and now they're helping you take that same exact journey, right? So it's not like your journey, you're actually kind of just following their journey. So to me, that's more mentoring, because that's somebody who's already accomplished something and helping you to accomplish that same thing. And there's purpose for that. But coaching, like true coaching, when I got into that space, it was like somebody like opening up this whole other door I didn't even know was there, and allowing me to actually find the door and open the door and walk through the door on my own. And so for me, it was like unlocking this whole part of my brain that I hadn't been accessing before. And that, brings up all these other questions that I wouldn't have thought to ask. I wouldn't have even thought about. And for me, in practice, that creates a whole, it's like, I feel like my superpower when I'm coaching is that like, I'm super non-judgmental, and I'm just curious. I just get to keep asking questions and holding space for the person to like get curious themselves. And so that's sort of what it felt like for me. It was just like kind of this whole other thing that I had no access to before. Suddenly somebody was giving me permission to like look for the door, open the door, walk through the door, and then, what's next? We don't know. We'll find out.
I love that. And that's like, actually, you put that into words so perfectly. And I'm wondering, like, what do you think the impact is? So let's say you continued on that path of just following that mentorship.
I would be a business coach.
Yeah, doing something so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This journey into coaching literally opened the door to becoming a religious trauma coach, because like I said, it was almost like I didn't have the capacity to know that I had permission to to go through this whole other space. And coaching, like the explanation of coaching changed for me, because I understood what coaching really was. And so I don't think I had ever even like thought about being like, I don't know what you would call this. I guess it's kind of like life coaching, right? But it feels cheap to call it life coaching. I don't know why. But yeah, like I wouldn't have opened up the door to start asking questions about like what I truly wanted to do, what was my purpose, which opened the door to me being like, oh yeah, of course, like my entire journey has led me to be a religious trauma coach and help other people, escape toxic religion and find their unique path forward, whether that be a like staying in a church in the Christian space, or like completely getting out of that and finding their own brand of spirituality.
I love that. Let's jump to Kassandra, because I know you have kind of like a bit of a same experience with the whole coaching in leadership. So can you tell us, what, first of all, let's start with what brought you to coaching and what was really pulling you to dive into coaching skills?
So for me, it was really I had kind of started to advance in my career and started leading individuals and various teams, as well as cross-functionally. And I just kind of got to a point where I had a lot of kind of tactical, project management, change management, and those, the variety of different courses that you can take to elevate your skills. And I felt like I was a good manager and leader, but I got to a point where I felt like, how can I be really, truly a great leader? And there was a big question mark that came after that. So, you have different leaders that you look up to, and you try to emulate. You have those leaders that are not great leaders, that you say, I do not want to do that. And so, I kind of just got to a point where I felt I plateaued. And what's really interesting is the change management triangle in ProSci training is project management, change management, leadership. And I was like, okay, I've completely, absorbed or kind of consumed my portfolio with things to get really good at that project management, change management side of things. How can I start to dive into that leadership side? And that one's a little trickier. And so I just started to kind of look up different leadership trainings. Nothing was really sitting with me. I knew that coaching had a great deal to, really kind of look at elevating your team. And it was a way of, rather than managing, but coaching kind of equaled leadership. And so I just started looking online and finding the coach approach, and, did some reading, had a couple of kind of one-on-one introduction calls with the team, and really loved kind of what I was hearing. And I thought, okay, this will be my next journey. And so I signed up for the course, and I've been doing it kind of ever since. But yeah, really my driver was, how do I become a better leader? And how do I start to really hone in on those skills?
I love that. And I know, you're such I feel like I would classify you as a high achiever, right? So I just love that you have that drive to just learn and to grow as a leader, which is, I think, what makes you a great leader. And so I'm curious, how did your approach to leadership change after learning coaching skills?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think really it transformed how I show up for the team. It transformed the way that I first look inside kind of myself, because, going through the coach approach really teaches you that, firstly, your own emotional intelligence, and where, if I can give a specific example, with one of my team members, if something happens or there's a situation that then evokes a certain feeling inside of me, I might get frustrated, or I start to get tense. I'm more internally aware of, how am I reacting to this? And then pausing and asking myself. So I do almost like a little mini coaching session with myself to look internally and say, why is that, why is this coming up for me? And why am I feeling that way? And then that way I'm better able to then transform that. And one of my kind of mandate has always been, be in service to someone else. If you're speaking from yourself and you're in service to you, you need to stop. And someone that was an excellent leader gave me that advice once. And coaching really elevated that, because it allowed me to go internally, ask myself those questions, become more self-aware in terms of how I'm going to react, and then choose more so how I want to react from a place of, I would say, ultimate presence, and really using, getting myself fully present to then show up better for the team members to which I'm serving. And so that's how it changed internally for myself. But then also externally, I'm now able to, instead of saying, this is how we solve that problem, turn around and start to look at what got you there, and start asking questions like, what do you see? What do you like? What is missing? So that a common research in professional industry is that if someone comes to you with something that is 80% plan, if you give them that other 20%, it's no longer their plan. It is now yours, and their level of accountability, their level of, excitement or feeling of that they're driving it is no longer theirs. It's now yours. And so coaching has really changed that, so that I'm not giving them the 10 or the 20%. I'm helping them realize and get there themselves. And so through open-ended questioning and such. And so it was really twofold. As you can see, it kind of hit myself. And then also, is an enabler for me to better show up for the team.
Yeah, I love that so much. You spoke to both sides. So like, not only does it create that inner presence and peace, like we're able to better self-manage, but then we can also use those skills to help empower our teams, right? I'm wondering, what impact, because you talked about that if we add that 10 or 20% to the plan, it's no longer theirs, it's ours. How has that shifted maybe like your team dynamic or accountability?
I would say it's allowed them, and it's funny because I always say, don't be the firefighter, take ultimate responsibility. And it's really allowed them to stay in a place of taking full responsibility for their projects, for their initiatives. And I'm not perfect. I fall back into old habits, as anyone does. I'm still learning. I'm still practicing. But it really, I have noticed a significant change, especially with, some of those members that directly report to me, where I'm able to kind of create some of the boundaries, but then they color it in, they fill it in themselves. And so I'm finding that it's actually freeing me up so that I can do more of the strategic work instead of doing the tactical.
I imagine that plays a huge role in keeping them motivated and engaged as well. You're not having to probably check in as often. And
absolutely, it changes the entire conversation, and it changes, again, like it not only enables them and they feel like fueled and they're energized and feel like they have something to which that they're driving. And so from that perspective, it's great to see the team elevating themselves and seeing their skills actually improve. But then, and also their excitement from, how they're progressing against something, because I can see that they're excited to do something versus just saying, okay, I'm doing X, Y, Z task.
Right. Yeah, I love that. It really helps to help them own, part of the company's growth or part of the whatever you're growing to, whatever the project is. It helps that team really, do teamwork. So thank you for sharing. So I'm wondering if we can think back, because coach training, the way that we do coach training is so different than anything else I've ever done. It's that mindfulness and the full presence, and that takes a lot of undoing. I came from corporate hustle, like get things done, do things this way. So I'm so curious to know, when you were going through the Coach Approach Academy level 1 for the first time, you're in week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, we're just getting on those calls. What was going through your mind, or what were you experiencing at the moment when you were exposed to this new way of being and leading?
It's been so long since then, but I feel like a lot of the stuff that I really stuck out to me in the beginning was Pam explaining that the psychology of coaching and what was actually happening in your brain when you were being told something, and what was happening in your brain when you were being coached. And it for me as a mom of kids who are school age and stuff, I was shocked and also not surprised at how they're being taught. So they're being told all these things, and this is why the education system is not leaving the path open for kids to learn things in a way that actually sticks with them and actually is impactful and makes a difference, versus them like, okay, I just have to learn these things so I can pass this test so I can like move on to the next grade, right? And that's like obviously a whole other topic, but it made me really see the difference between how my kids were learning and responding to life at that time versus like what I was experiencing doing the coach training. And I did not know what to expect going into it, honestly. Like when I initially got the email with like all the expectations and stuff, I was like, holy crap, am I even going to be able to do this? Like, it's going to be a lot. It wasn't. It was so easy for me to like fall into the routine of like making the time and showing up for the calls and stuff. I didn't realize, I don't think, that there was actually going to be so much practice of coaching inside of the certification, which obviously like made a huge difference in it, because it wasn't just like learning the skills of coaching and then like answering some questions, right? It was like literally, okay, we're going to teach you some stuff. We're going to show you why this is so impactful. And then we're going to like actually let you practice this with each other, and not just with each other, with us. And we're also going to give you feedback so that you can continue to like hone your craft. It was like not anything I expected, honestly, when I signed up. And it was so much better, so much more impactful than I anticipated.
Yeah, I feel like just to mirror that, the Coach Approach Academy, I feel like some people might be like, oh, like that's your mom's program. Of course, you're going to be promoting it. But it's like, I don't promote things unless I truly believe in them. Like people come to me and they're like, oh, you should join this MLM. You're so great at like sales and you would be so good at this. I'm like, I can't. Like, I don't believe in a product. I believe in the power of, ourselves and coaching and all of these things. So yeah, truly the learning experience is so different. And so I just love that you brought that up, Brie, because that I think is a huge part of what separates, ourselves from, people who just do like weekend practice. Like those coaching skills don't stick because you don't have the time to really embed them in your day-to-day reality, right? So Kassandra, would love to hear your experience.
So I mean, similar to what Brie had stated around, your entire life has been always, kind of that academic and, very much learn this information, regurgitate it, passing score, move on. And like very task-based kind of oriented. And so I kind of had my okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to learn like, coaching, and then I'll like go out, pick something else in order to elevate my leadership skills. But I have to say, I thought, and my perception of what the course would be compared to what it was wildly different. And so I thought we were going to go and learn kind of the framework and elements of coaching. And we did learn that. And there were kind of those tactical elements in terms of the structure of coaching, some tactics and open-ended questions. But as Brie mentioned, it was much more of practice. You had your accountability groups, and it was really, and as well, coaching you personally in terms of so that you can experience coaching, so that you know what it feels like, so that then you can practice your craft in order to give that to others. And so my first class, I'm laughing because we've spoken about this, but the first class I showed up to after, I thought, oh my dear Lord, there is no way I am going to stay in this class. And I'm like, what is this kumbaya yoga? And like people were crying. I was like, this is not for me. This is not what I signed up for. And it was, a lot of work, like, let's be present, and a lot of buzz kind of jargon of, I'll bring my full presence, and, and how does this, how are you showing up? And a lot of discussions around, feelings. And when you come at it from a business lens, which was definitely the frame to which I was in at the time, I thought, there's no way, this is not for me. And everyone was asking, what are your takeaways from the first class? And how is everyone feeling? And I was honest. I was like, I'm not entirely sure. And it was interesting because we followed that session by having our first one-on-one kind of coach connect. And one of the coaches that were supporting the Academy actually said, I observed, this is how you were fit. And I was the only one that said that out of everyone. So I definitely stood out. But she said, I observed that, it didn't seem like it was for you. And we chatted about it. And she said, in her own personal experience as well, she said, we will get to the framework. There will be, there are standards, there are, ethics, there are certain things that, a coach does and things that you'll learn that are that tactical. But first we want to lean into you, give you that experience. And then allow you to kind of practice the craft. And some are more emotional, some are, and it's not counseling, it's not mentoring. And so she said, be open to it. And so I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. And then as we went through, I really started to realize, okay, I have to open myself first and dive into me. Before I can elevate that leadership craft and that coaching craft. And so I think that was so impactful because you can't get that from a business book. You can't get that from a mentor. And, similar to, one of the reasons we said you and Ashley are kind of creating this podcast is that, you can't get that from misinformation either, or individuals who are out there who are saying they're coaches, but are actually coaching to the ICF standard. And so I think what I love the most and surprised me the most was the amount that I worked on myself and how that shows up not only in my career, but Bree touched on it in terms of, me raising my children and my relationship with my husband and others in my life. So it really turned out to be full cycle and hits all elements. But I'll never forget the first day because I was just like, hold the phone. This is not for me.
I love this. I'm just going to jump in here because I'm going to echo some of what both of you are saying about this process, but I'm going to offer it from my perspective going through the cohort, which I went through with you, Cass. You went through at the same time. And also because I helped co-facilitate last year's cohort, like what I saw on the other side as a facilitator. So I remember, like, Cass, everything you're talking about in terms of like the kumbaya, like the yoga, like the internal work, the emotions, I remember that to a T. But it's funny because I was at a point in my life where I was like, thank God I'm here. This is what I need. I need this quiet space to do this work, to go internally, to shine a light on myself, to work on me. Like I knew, as awkward maybe as it felt at times and uncomfortable, I knew that I was like, this is what I need. And I need to remain open to this process because like my soul was so loudly screaming, like, take all of this in. But I do remember like the first time we did a meditation, right? Because it's about, and you learn this as you go through the academy, it's about coaching presence and like, what does it mean to be present and to be mindful? And part of that is like, how can we show up? And I remember that first meditation, and it's a quick meditation, but I was like struggling. I'm like, what is this? How am I going to get through? Like, is this going to come back up? So I do remember that, like, that was my personal experience. And I remember co-facilitating last year. And I remember having conversations after, with Pam, who's been like mentoring through, right, and training me on how to like run the academy. And I could see others, like the squirminess, the uncomfortability, people showing up thinking, oh, I'm coming here to gain these tactical skills. And like, what the fuck is happening? Because you're having me go internally. And the fact that like you get coached, right? So people were showing up thinking they were going to gain A, B, C, D, E, F, G and practice A, B, C, D, E, F, G on others. But then they had to show up and be vulnerable because they were also receiving coaching on the other end, right? So that everybody could get practice. And you could just see them like, it almost, the energy that I picked up was like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, what is this? Like, what am I really learning here? And to see it kind of evolve and then like see that cohort through to the end a couple months later and to see the transformations that people like made personally was amazing. You know, this idea, which I'm starting to kind of take under like my wing, this idea of like, you know, in order to be a true leader, you need to lead self first. And I think that that's a huge gap that not a lot of leaders do, right? They don't know how to do it. We haven't been taught how to, you know, take care of ourselves. So to see people kind of come through and think, well, I don't need this. Like, who needs to really, you know, get in control of their self and be aware of their emotions and, you know, what does it mean to show full presence and to be mindful, to come through the other end of that and then kind of settle into that and see, okay, you know what, like this all has a purpose. So those are just kind of like the two things that I saw going through it myself, but then also being on the other end as a facilitator.
Interesting that you say that, because I think it ties into, we were never taught, like our generation was never taught what is mindfulness, like, and at least officially. And I do. So, you know, you're not taught to be, you know, what is presence? What is mindfulness? You know, listen to how your body, your mind, your like every inch of you is responding in a certain situation, you know, and your intuition, like you're not taught how to do that. You're not given the space to even do that. And it'll be very interesting because I know now, you know, coaching before was not, you know, a really large practice, but it's gained in popularity and awareness over the last 50 years. And then, but in addition, schools now are teaching children about mindfulness, about, you know, kind of the meditation, or not only meditation and yoga, because that's not what coaching is. So I just want to clarify, but you know, they are teaching mindfulness. They're teaching, you know, self-awareness. And I wonder how that's going to impact us like longer term. And if that's actually, and how they're actually teaching it. And I think also our generation becoming so much more open to coaching and, you know, not only practicing coaching, but also being exposed to coaching will impact the way that we raise our children.
Yeah. And I wanted to add to that because obviously I came into like the cohort, I feel like a little bit different than Ashley and Kassandra. So I grew up in a Christian cult. And so like the intuition piece was like something that was blocked off for many years, right? Because like I couldn't trust myself and all that. That is all a whole other topic. But so I had that blocked off. But by the time that I had joined the coaching cohort, I had done a lot of healing already. And so I feel like I came into it actually as a pretty spiritual, intuitive person. And so for me, it was normal for somebody to ask me like, how does this make you feel or whatever, and for me to just answer, not be like, that's like a weird question. A few years prior, yes, I would have been like, what is going on here? It made me feel actually more comfortable because I was like, oh, okay, it's not just like a course. However, I feel that being a part of the cohorts and learning more about the coach approach and tapping more into my intuition just like strengthened that for me. And I came out on the other side of that. Like I was super nervous about coaching someone, practicing the coaching skills like in front of everybody and also being coached. So for me, it's actually opened the door to be able to be a more vulnerable person without worrying about like being unsafe, and passion for creating safe spaces, because essentially that's what Pam has done. She has created these spaces that are safe for people to like bring their vulnerabilities and have everybody hold space for that, right? Everybody support that person and not judge that person. And so, yeah, so even though I came into the space as like a more maybe tapped in more to my intuition and more spiritual, I do think that I saw huge leap forward in that, coming out of that, where I was way more tuned in, not only to my intuition, but like noticing things with my kids too, right? Like being able to ask questions that were different than what I was asking before. There's just been moments where things have come up, and instead of just like seeing the surface level thing, I've asked a couple questions and like this whole other box got opened, right? So it's made me like a better human, a better mom, a better partner, and a better coach. So like not just one level, but like multifaceted.
I love that. It sounds like coaching really gave you like a framework. Like you already had the intuition and it was like, okay, this is real and this is how I can actually implement it in my life with my kids and my career.
And all of this just kind of reminds me too, Lauren, back to what we talked about in previous podcasts. And also, Cass, you'd be familiar with this through going through mentor coaching now, right? Like going back to what are these like standards and principles and ethics that we follow in corporate or core competencies, because this is what it means to show up as a coach. Like what is your unique presence, right? So in doing these things, and like whether that's meditating or tapping into your intuition, however you do that, right? Like that is your unique presence that you bring to a coaching conversation. So I think that it's important for people to know, and maybe the meditation didn't work for everybody. Maybe by the end, people were still like, hey, that's not my thing. But what is your thing? And I think that that helps you to show up, to coaching, but also in your leadership roles, and then just in general, conversations with friends or family or whatever it might be.
It's funny because even the most, like I've ran a couple cohorts now. So even the people that I didn't think were going to buy into it, by the end, completely, I was mind blown, because, we work with like CEOs, we work with leaders, like people who, that world is very, like I would frame it as masculine energy. It's very hustle. It's very do this, on to the next thing. Like who the heck has time to sit and reflect and just be present? Like that's not something that we have time for. We got shit to do, So yeah, it's always amazing to see, because I feel that uncomfortability as well in the beginning. And it's like, oh, here we go, meditation. I'm like, just trust the process, And by the end of it, you always see how it's impacted people and how much of a shift really happens. And that's a really beautiful thing.
And if I can add to, you spoke around, corporate America, corporate Canada being, very masculine kind of in like energy. And, we've talked a lot about, presence, introspection, meditation, and actually like going inwards. But I have also found a way of, and actually this goes back to the ICF kind of core competencies. And this is why I think formal training is so important, because one of their competencies, a lot of them circle around really like, who are you serving, and to show up for them, like notice their body language, the words that they're using. And so I think something for me that's been really helpful, especially in more of a corporate setting, to which I use versus a spiritual setting, I don't force the spiritual on, or the meditation, or some of those tactics on the team, or even that I coach up in the organization and I coach down and across in the organization. And so when I am, and depending on the person to which I'm working with, they might be more fast paced. And so I might just ask them an open-ended question that stops them in their track and forces them to stop and think. I don't say, okay, let's sit for a minute. Let's have a talk. Let's, neutralize. And then there's some individuals I'll say, why don't we just take a second to just take a breath, because that works for them. But if I said that to one of my high performing like chiefs, they'd be like, what are you talking about? They look at me as if I have 2 heads or 3 heads. And so I think what's really unique is that you learn some of those skills, you learn and you see going through the coach approach. I saw so many different styles, and Ashley, you touched on that as well in terms of, individual styles of different and what's unique in their superpowers as we kind of go through the coach. But you really develop your own brand. And then you develop your own way of taking those core competencies and what you learn and tailoring it to different situations and different individuals. And so I've been able to tailor that to more of the masculine corporate side of things, which is probably wildly different than the way that, Bree, you show up for religious trauma. But that's the beauty, I think, of coaching and these tactics, And so you have so much interoperability and like so many different ways and avenues of leveraging those skills.
Isn't it cool that we kind of take like a coach approach to coach training? Like, here's some information. How do you want to apply it? You know? And I love that you were able to really just lean into your own style, Kassandra. And something I wanted to mention is like the beauty of going through coach training is like you don't have to use those same skills with your team, with your clients, whatever, but you bringing that energy like of groundedness, of presence is really the shift that's going to ripple out, right? Like you don't have to walk through a guided meditation or like even breathing, like whatever. You adapt to the client and the person you're working with, you know, but I think by more people learning coaching skills, that's how we create those ripples and we inspire other people to really like, yeah, I never thought of that question or whatever, you know, and it just such a beautiful effect to witness. This is such a great conversation. I'm cognizant of time. So let's go to where are you now with coaching?
Well, I'm a religious trauma coach. So what I am applying my coaching to within the confines of business and work is helping people who have left toxic religion and helping them find their path forward again. Because basically what happens is they get stuck, like they leave the church, but then they realize like we kind of think that leaving the church is like the end goal, right? But when we leave the church, we realize it's like the beginning of the journey. And the journey is like coming back home to yourself, right? Like finding out who you are outside of that, all of that stuff, and what you even believe in, right? So there's a lot of stuff attached to that. And coaching is such an amazing tool along with therapy. I would highly recommend that to anybody who's listening to this who like falls under the parameters of having left a toxic church or whatever. Therapy and coaching alongside each other are super powerful because therapy is really helping you like kind of like look back and heal from the stuff that has happened to you. And coaching is helping you to look forward and take those steps forward and like, where do you want to go? Which I find is the big distinction between therapy and coaching. Coaching is really looking forward to where you want to go. So it helps people open their mind to recognizing that they can decide, they can create intention around how they want the rest of their life to go, how they want to believe, how they want to be in life. And that looks different for many people. And so the power of coaching for me, at least, is the uniqueness of the journey for each person, right? The journey that I've taken, while people will resonate with me as a coach because I've been where they are, we may take very different paths forward, right? And so I get to show up and hold the space for them to take that path forward wherever it might lead them. So yeah, that's what I am bringing into the coaching space.
I love that. What about you, Kassandra?
Yeah. So for myself, I have definitely taken the coaching training and just applied it to my day-to-day, especially at work and leading kind of the teams and the individuals that I work with. And so from that, it's more of I'm using it as a leadership tool. And then also actually just it happens that internally at the Canadian Red Cross, we've just started a coaching team. And so I'll be joining that team as well to help and become one of our internal coaches. And so I think, just from a leadership perspective, what I've noticed is that as I started to take that course, I've started to then have conversations with others. I signed up someone on my team. I said, you know what, you're really great from a tactical perspective, but I know you want to elevate your leadership skills. So I referred, one of those team members. I've explored with other individuals and been open about the fact that I've taken coaching and found out that there is a community of individuals in the organization that have taken coaching. And so we're almost kind of sharing stories and then, becoming champions for that internally, which I think is going to have an eventual impact on company culture. And so that is, I think, going to be very powerful. And that's the means to which I want to use coaching, no matter what organization I'm in, and to help, in terms of realization of goals. Because one of my, I guess, philosophies with my teams is the fact that, I like to inspire them, fulfill them, and get them engaged. And whether it's with me or if it's external to the organization, because I realize they're not going to be with me forever, they're still in my tribe. And so how can I help them as individuals realize those goals? And what I love is that I've set that intention through coaching in so much more of a clear way that now I can really bring that to my team. And people are taking me up on it. And I love that. Like, I mean, what I never imagined as a leader that I would have someone tell me, 3 months before, that they're going to start looking for other opportunities because they just don't see it as being the right fit. And that we get to co-create what that looks like next. Like they're still committed. They're still, working hard and engaged. But what an honest and transparent space where now I get to go and interview or go and hire for someone, but I'm not in a panic. Like I don't have someone saying, hey, I'm leaving. This is my 2 weeks notice. It's been transformational that way. And then I'm getting my ACC because for me, the type of individual that I am, I want to stay accountable and I want to stay within that kind of community and keep that present in my life so that I continue to elevate this because I recognize it's not a, one and done type of a course. The course is complete, but it's not a one and done type of a journey. And so in order to continue to elevate, I'm creating little mini tribes, Ashley being part of one for accountability, but also just, being a part of that ACC, staying on top of the core competencies and the industry so that I can stay within my journey, but also elevate my skills as learnings come through that avenue. So that's really kind of what I'm looking at. And how that transpires into the future, who knows? But I didn't take the course because I wanted to become a professional coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's something that a lot of people think, oh, I have to do that course to be a professional coach.
Well, I love that you're now on that journey to going to get your ACC. I'm sure that wasn't your intention in the beginning, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Something I just want to point out, I know Ashley's got a question, but Kassandra, I just want to say, like, that shift in your team members coming to you 3 months in advance to co-create a new opportunity and to co-create their career path, the fact that you hold that space for them to do that is absolutely incredible. Because I know that, personally, when I was working corporate, I felt like, oh my God, I can't tell them I'm going to leave. Like, they're just going to let me go now. Or, there's like a lot of fear, I think, in corporate, and you have to do your best and all of this stuff. So I think that's so incredible. And I think that the fact that someone's able to come to you with that challenge or that transparency just speaks volumes to your leadership. So really incredible.
That's amazing. It's funny, actually, Lauren, we must be vibing on the same wavelength because my question kind of has to do with that transformation and how. So Cass, because you're bringing coaching skills into, an organization where you're a leader, how was that received? So if you think about like Cass before going to the Coach Approach Academy to, Cass as the leader after, like how was that shift perceived and received from your employees?
I had led the team in a way of like being more transparent like before as well. And so like there was, but I think after the coaching, I think it was more of, I think the big shift is that it removed the fear, but there's still an element, like I'm cautious to say, like there's still a hesitation. But I think I have, especially coming back, like especially because I had a mat leave in between as well. And so, it was really interesting is coming back, and there were some new team members that hadn't been with me, forever. And it was interesting because I had finished the second level of coaching. And I think the way I showed up after having kids and after going through the coach training is that I held such a different power in the way that I communicated that to the team. And it was funny because you could see from some of the new team members that they're almost shocked. They're like, I don't know if I trust this. Because I brought to the team, like, this is my why. And this is, how it relates to the Canadian Red Cross and why this fulfills me. And I want our team to have a why. Like, why are we here? Like, what is our service? And I just communicated it in a different way. I almost had a different language, I think, to communicate to the team after coaching that held my power, if you can kind of say, in a different way. And it's not power from like an ego or authority. It's just that I stood more powerfully in what I and who I am and my why and what I want for the team. And so you could almost see, and what's funny is it kind of translates really well to what you were saying about the new cohort coming in. You get those looks of, okay, I hear what you're saying, not really sure I'm bought in, I'm not really sure I understand. And then you see the team over the journey of realizing, no, I really can, come to her in a safe place. There is no judgment. I really can come, and there are people, and I've, communicated to the team that, this person did that, and we're still friends. Actually, one person who left actually just came up to see me and my kids the other day and kind of say hi and have lunch. And, that really she means what she says. And so I think there's a lot of parallels to what you were saying about even going into the coaching world and how people are going into that training and how people react. It was the same with my team. But now that they realize that what I'm saying there, it's congruent to my actions, like my actions and my words align. I think that it creates such a different space of non-judgment and empowerment within the team. Or did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. It sounds that through kind of like honing in on your power, right? Not egotistical power, but like your leadership, that you were helping them to also kind of feel empowered themselves.
And it takes time, right? Just like, we were all saying, I don't think coaching is getting more popular, but it's not the norm yet. So it takes time when people are coming from, a world that operates so differently into this safe space. And it's like, am I actually okay to be vulnerable here? So, but I love your commitment to staying true to, holding that space for people and just guiding them along the journey. So this has been such a great conversation, and I know that we've got to head out, but I'm just curious if, really quickly, you guys have one piece of advice to offer someone who's considering coach training.
Yeah, I feel like if somebody is already like on the path to coaching, maybe they're coming from like a similar space where they have been experiencing coaching and now they've been like introduced to this idea of something different. I think it comes back to like why I always say whenever we're talking about coaching, but like if they could just remain curious and allow themselves to see if it, I don't know, obviously Kassandra shared that she wasn't like really somebody who could feel things before, and so it might not be true for some people, but I think the people who come into my like spaces tend to be the people who resonate with that jargon. But I think if people can just remain curious and feel if that is the right next step for them, I think getting into some spaces where they can experience, even if it's just watching somebody coach someone else, that can be a really good way for them to, really like feel into, is this something that is right for me? Is this something I want to explore further? If they really have a passion for helping people find their own unique path to whatever, the end goal. All of us do it in a different way, but that is ultimately what we're here to do, right? Is to help people find their own path to X. Then I would highly suggest coaching. Honestly, like we've said in this call, it really was life-changing for us in different ways. It really opened up avenues for me outside of career as well. Like it opened up the ability for me to have better conversations with people, to have healthier conversations with people, to hold more space for people just in my normal everyday life as a mom, as a partner, as a friend. And then obviously it also opened up avenues for me to be a better coach and to help people dig deeper and, be able to go further in a shorter amount of time, which I think is always like the goal for me because I'm impatient. So,
and I think for me, if anything, I think like get ready to get rewired. I mean, like coach training isn't just for someone who wants to be a professional coach. It's not, it really is, it's an alternative to counseling. It's an alternative to being mentored. It's a alternative to, elevating your leadership skills and, or as an alternative to individuals who might be reading self-help books or it might be, trying to work on themselves or go through their own spiritual journey, but they don't know where they're going. I think the coach training, like I said before, it makes you get coached first. So you go inward and then you change how you show up in the world. And Bree touched it in terms of all of the different, all of the different titles. Like I have different titles. I have my work title, I'm wife, my mom, and so it changes the way that you show up. So it rewires you in a way. And I think the misconception is that coach training is just for those who want to be, professional coaches. But that's not the case. At least it wasn't for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your experience with us, Kassandra and Bree. I personally loved having this conversation with you, and it was really great to hear from your perspective what coaching has been like. So that was such a great conversation with Kassandra and Bree, and something that came up that I wanted to dive into but forgot about was like, what is the importance of leading self first? Because this is something that Kassandra really brought up, was like, I had to really focus on myself so that I could lead my team better. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, Ashley, but from my perspective, something that we teach a lot in the Coach Approach Academy is taking off the pressure and empowering other people to lead themselves, self-managing like we were talking about. But really what I think is so needed for women leaders, and not just females, but I think men as well, but we have this tendency to take on so much, at home, at work, like, oh, we'll just add something else, like, oh, I'll take care of it, oh, don't worry about it, I got this. But there's a limit, you know what I mean? Like we can't just take everything on. And so I'm wondering, Ashley, what was your experience like with that, with kind of learning to I'm kind of a control freak, or I used to be more of a control freak. So for me, it was really impactful to kind of be like, oh, wait, I don't have to do everything my way. Like I can let somebody else do it their way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's interesting. So as you were saying that, what's coming up for me is the idea of people needing to be problem solvers for other people. Or like you hear that often, like, oh, all these people come to me with their problems and I help them solve them, right? And like there's a, gratification that we get from that. Or, people pleasing, right? We want to get things done and do them well. So how can we help to control that outcome of how that's going to look so it looks good? Or so that, so-and-so has to submit something to one of the bosses and it's not getting done. So how can I step in to help get it done so I can please my boss at the end of the day, right? As opposed to, like, if you're like that middle manager, like, how can you, get around that to empower your team? I think that there's actually a big psychological piece, and we talk about this in coach training, like the rewiring of the brain, right? So how can we, working on yourself first is that internal deep dive for you to even become and bring to your conscious awareness some of those behaviors you have, right? I think for some people, it's just in their nature to be the problem solver. They don't know anything else. They don't even necessarily know that they're doing it, right? So how can we bring that awareness to the forefront so that they can shift that? And when you kind of sift through these things like people pleasing, there's some psychological baggage, if you will, I think that you can unpack as to, why do you feel the need to people please? So when you can kind of sift through and work through some of that yourself, and I'm just talking this out loud with you right now, but when you can kind of sift through and understand some of that, you position yourself better so you can be more reflective and reflexive in your practices so that you don't just automatically jump to let's solve this problem. It's wait, okay. So if I can step away from this, how can I help to empower you? Because we know that everybody has the answers to all of their questions. They have the solutions. They know how to get through the challenges. But sometimes we don't, it's not always, this external conscious practice. So how can we help bring that to consciousness?
Right. It's changing the habit because, I think we're so disempowered. I don't feel disempowered now, but I think that through conditioning, through learning, if you will, through school, through corporate, through whatever path you've taken, if you haven't been asked those questions to really discover for yourself, I'm gonna guess, observe this, for anyone listening, observe this tendency, but when a question comes to mind, how quick are you to go to someone to ask the question of how do I solve this problem, right? Versus really listening to yourself and trying to dig within yourself to look for that solution. And or if you're a leader, observe how quick are you to solve somebody else's problem. Even if your kid is to come up and be Mom, I need blah, 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 or how do I do this or something? How quick are you to jump into the automatic behavior of just giving the answer versus asking an open-ended question to help them figure it out?
Yeah. And that's a huge awareness piece, right? And what you said about we're just kind of conditioned in that way. And if you go and I know that I feel I bring everything back to the educational institution.
Right.
But if you think about it, right, the Industrial Revolution, how we were schooled to then produce in factories, right? It's just outcome, do this, get that result, and keep turning that out. So when we get into that continuous loop, it's habituated. And it's well, how can we kind of pause that and rewire that? And then, before you talk about the ripple effect. So if I'm able to do that with myself, how can I then use that awareness and consciousness to then also ask questions of my workers instead of just having them run off to somebody else, how can they kind of sift through things themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that has such an impact. I don't think necessarily, no, I don't know. Because I've used these coaching skills, with my wife, and she's wow, that really helped me to access some an answer I already knew, but that has been in my head that I've been processing and processing and processing. And yeah, it's just incredible, when you shift your approach to conversations, how the outcome can change so dramatically in a good way, in a really good way.
Yeah. And then you talked about how we're not raised to think this way, right? Mm-hmm. So you can see that come up in coaching conversations when you throw something back at someone, someone's sitting with you, oh, I need to do this, this, and this. And I, how do you think I should do it? And it's well, that's a great question. How do you think you should do it? And they're kind of oh,
that's why I'm asking
you. Think about, yeah, tell me, and it's well, no, you have your own tools, but we're not taught to tap into that.
Yeah.
How to.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, not even that, but yes that, and also trust that we have that answer. For me, I think a lot of my work has been around trusting in myself, trusting in the way that I want to do things. Because, yeah, I notice it's a huge habit, and it still comes up for me, though, to look to other people and like, okay, how's that person doing it? Instead of just taking a moment to pause and ask myself, well, Lauren, how do you want to do it? You know, this is your life.
Yep. And it relates to some of the work and things that Brie was talking about, right? In regard to like, how do you step into intuition that, you know, I think as like in society in general, they are trying to control us to a point where we do have that mind-body disconnect.
Yeah.
It's like, don't learn, like listening to your intuition is like spiritual woo-woo. Like, you know, it, you know, that's not what we're here for. Like, don't do that. Like, how can we get people further dissociating from their bodies? But it's like, no, like that's where the magic is. You know, intuitively the answers to everything if you can just tune in, find that quiet space, like listen to that intuitive nudge, whatever it is for you. But yeah, we got to find how to do that and like give ourselves permission to do that.
Totally.
Right? I think that that's another layer. Like I know how to do those things, but in certain scenarios still, as I'm going through my journey, I might feel more uncomfortable to go into those practices, right? Because I don't allow myself or give my permission. Oh, I can be vulnerable with a lot of people, but there's certain people where it's like, I can't do that, right?
Yeah.
So how can we give ourselves permission to also step into that?
Yeah, step into our power. Yeah, so good. What a great conversation. We could probably talk for 5 more hours, but yeah, that was so good. Any last thoughts?
No, we could just podcast though forever talking about these things.
I know. So I just want to throw out there, like for anyone who's listening and you're resonating and you're like, I kind of feel, you know, there's something about this coaching thing. Like I want to learn more. Like, I don't know if this is for me. Truthfully, we would love to have a conversation with you. We are so passionate about coaching, and we want to help you make your next move the right move for you. So if you would like to book a 30-minute complimentary, what do we call them? Discovery call, connection call with us, we would be happy to have a conversation with you to answer your questions, to help you see what coaching really is. 30 minutes is not a lot of time, but it is enough time to see a shift. So we would love to give you that opportunity. No strings attached. We just want to share our love of coaching with you. So, and if you're interested, of course, in coach training, we'd be happy to send you more information or answer any questions that you have. So, yeah, amazing.
Do it up. Take us up on the offer.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for doing this episode again with me, Ashley. And I think we'll do one more. We have another exciting episode in the works for you. And yeah, we'll see you on the next episode.